And first of all, I would just like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, whose country in which I was born and the land in which I work and live. I'm here in the town of Melbourne, in the studios at RMIT University Television Studios. I'm very grateful for the support of James Gormley here, helping me connect with you this evening. I'd like to share with you the humble beginnings here on Port Phillip Bay, in what only is not only an enormous country, but an enormous ocean, and a beautiful vantage in which I started to explore the world from the age of a little girl. I'll just make sure this is it. So it was here as a young girl that I first thought that the ocean, being an enormous energy source, was speaking to me, that it could read my mind. And so I started to speak in return. I started to listen to the ocean, to hear its call, to start to understand its vibrational frequency, and to see if I could start to predict its motion, its flow, if I could start to understand its tidal shift and its behaviour and character. And it's something I love to do. It's something that many, many children of Australia love to do as they grew up on the water's edge. But for me, there was no hesitation in being an ocean explorer. But the idea of being a space explorer, that seemed a very distant or removed possibility or opportunity from where I stood. The idea of space, if you like, was something that I was going to grow into. I imagined that it would be a place that we would go to for a summer holiday in the future, just as we went to the beach on the weekends. There's one issue with my technology here. So we've got all of this high-tech equipment, and it's still a little manual. So my work as an artist began exploring these notions of what it might mean to inhabit other worlds, to inhabit and embody other spaces where we're cocooned and encapsulated in a world beyond that which we know, that which echoes everything that's inside of us. And it gives us an opportunity in a performative way to look to other worlds for something beyond that which we know. And that's partly an investigation that looks at the intersection of the technology and the environment, but also it looks at the body and the extreme performance or these extreme conditions that the body is placed under in these remote and isolated places. So in order to inform my work, I became an occupational diver, and I began to make equipment and devices for installation and performances that enabled me to translate some of that experience, some of the visceral experience of diving, of being cocooned inside a helmet, hearing my breath amplified, being able to respond in the moment, being incredibly cold, and working under hard conditions, being under pressure with a lifeline or an umbilical all the way to the surface. I then started to use my work in underwater defence and occupational diving as I was doing a PhD in this area to link in with other projects. The first was the Atlantica expedition, which was the longest undersea habitat expedition or mission proposed way back in 2007. I think I joined the crew. And instead we still haven't, we're still working towards building up the technology capability and the habitats, but we're not yet active as a crew. These are long duration projects. We're just going to show you a video now. I started to work with the NASA Ames Research Group, with NASA Ames Research Community. If we can just, James, put it to the first video. versus the other videos. This video. So I started working on the closed loop habitat system, preparing for a future lunar scenario, and this was developed with a group of 30 professionals from all different parts of the world, an international group of scientists, engineers, policymakers, artists, designers, medical professionals, entrepreneurs, and together we worked out a full mission architecture, looking at how we would live, survive, but also thrive on another planet. And this became the first step, the first major step for me, looking at what I had learned in an underwater world, what I had learned in terms of developing systems, but also principles for living, for performing well, for performing with crews and communities, and translating that into another environment, translating that into the world of space and defence. The system that we designed, or Mission Lunar Gaia, was presented at NASA Ames and to NASA HQ, and it was received really well. It was the first, bioregenerative life support system that had been designed using a cross-section of life support system models, plus introducing one or two new elements, including aquaponics, including all of the water features that we were all particularly fond of, that brought it up to, say, a 90% effectiveness rate, or closed loop effectiveness, which had not yet been achieved. So that was a great success. So we'll just go back onto the slide presentation today. So I also started to look at working with groups, training for astronauts, training simulations in neutral buoyancy environments. So translating all that I had learned underwater and in preparation for the protocols for an EVA, or extravehicular activity, or spacewalk, and working with groups to practice underwater, looking at their tethering protocols, looking at developing techniques for understanding orientation, communications, and so on. And I brought some of the dancery elements, some of the understandings of the body underwater, some of what I call an acrobatics understanding, where the body is one not only as a body of water itself, but it's a body of water in a body of water. And through that, we'll go to the second video, Jen. I started to work with dancers, I started to work with others to try and translate some of this idea to method. So while in my early performance years, I myself was attempting to fly underwater, to move, and I was exploring all sorts of choreography that was related to freedom that I felt, and expansiveness I felt when I was underwater. I wondered what it would be like in different conditions. I wondered what it was like when we translate that performance from a pedestrian action into an aquatic action, and perhaps one day into an astronautical action. So this is the group, the dancers from the company called Ballet Lab in Melbourne. Contemporary dancers. We worked on a piece here where we are mapping the body using motion tracking suit or system by XZ. And this enables me to map and understand the translation in the movement. And then we're literally taking the dancers and putting them in an aquatic environment and trying to understand how the movement changes, how the breath changes, how the movement, the fluidity of the body, the buoyancy changes with the action. Even though it's a choreographed action, even though it's a unified action, it's significantly different to that which we see on land. There's a beautiful poetry in symmetry and asymmetry that occurs. Swap and change the body from one domain to another. We want to understand that and translate that. So much of what I've done for over 10, 15 years as a commercial or occupational diver has been working alone. with my crew on the surface, so I'm a single diver with a single tether or a lifeline away. So in those safety critical environments, I'm developing choreography and I'm trying to create better performance while being in the moment and being responsive and conducting work in a workplace. Just as these dancers are doing as well, this is their work, their bodies are their tools, their language is gestural, and their essence and being can be mapped, and it can be orchestrated, and it can be translated from one domain to another. I'm very interested in this. I'm interested in this in my own practice, but I'm also interested in creating a dialogue with others or starting to move from one space to another. We're in a world where communication is vital. It's omnipresent, it's ubiquitous, and the pressures of that are ubiquitous. So I joined what was called, we'll go to the, back to the presentation again. Thanks, Jane. I joined the Exertion Games Lab and I started to look at hacking some technologies that might help me make those translations visible. I looked at the little Sparrow, I looked at spheres, which have been developed by MIT, little satellites with little thrusters that are working already currently at the International Space Station. And you can network them with Earth and play games and so on. There's also another proposal here, which were for a Mars rover or Mars lander that was made of these spikes, a little bit like a sea urchin. And it got me thinking about the differences between what would happen underwater. Clearly here, these are beautiful sea urchins here and anemones. They have a fluidity that the land bouncing spiked objects couldn't do. And I was wondering what sort of robot I could create for an aquatic environment that would have that fluidity and map the body in the same way. So I ended up hacking the Sparrow. It has a two-part motor system inside with 360-degree capability for direction and movement control. It has light, it has sound, it has vibration, it has all sorts of fun, playful things that I can play with. So I then looked at creating a casing for that. And I looked at a silicon flexible casing like that of an anemone or that of a sea creature, so that it could grab something in the water. So that when it rolled and when it moved, and it's like a ball, it's usually used on the ground, but when we placed it in water and it needed some sort of resistance, it needed something to grab onto, to stabilize, but also to move as it propelled along. So this casing, this beautiful organic shape, gave it that. If it was anything hard, if it was anything wrong, it would create too much drag, or it wouldn't allow it. It would just try and orient it to a ground zero or a point zero all the time that it could move. So I was able to get these beautiful little, what I call explorer fish, to talk to each other. I could network them as well. So I ended up with one mother fish and a whole series of baby fish. So if the mother fish moved in one way over here, the entire school of baby fish would mimic this action. And I set up I worked with a coder to create a JavaScript add-in, if you like, and to be able to network all of the school of fish and all of their various colours to different types of actions. So whether so if I could interact with one in one tank just for demonstration purposes, you would see the results in the other tank. So if I held one down really low and pushed it down, it would start to vibrate, and all of the others would start to vibrate and flash, showing distress. So I found it to anthropomorphize, you understand the word, each of the creatures so that you become creature-like. Here's an installation at Kai in 2013 where people could come along and place their hands in the motherfish there, which was the bright red one, to play and interact. My view was that I wanted one of the dancers in an XM suit or myself to be able to link in and effectively wear a whole series of motherfish or sensor technologies on the XM suit that would translate to an entire body or school of these explorer fish underwater. So if you can imagine a dancer creating a move that then the school of fish would mimic, just in a way, in terms of biomimicry, that we see a large school of fish mimicking the action of a whale or a large marine creature. Now, why do I do that? Why am I interested in that? Yes, of course I want to go deeper, and I want to go further, but we don't yet have any technology that maps the human body motion underwater, besides that in really shallow water. And we know the body, or I certainly know the body performs really differently at depth. It also performs really differently when we have different breathing apparatus so that we can stay down there for a lot longer. Here is another type of blue sensor, a blue light sensor that is being used at depth. And I'm looking at the possibility of hacking or adapting these in the same way that I had adapted the Sphero for a deeper robotic translation. The only problem with this is everything is fine and we can make that work and make that happen. But the flocking and or schooling connectivity between all of them is very difficult when you don't have, when you have a lot of turbulence and a lot of surge. But the idea is that you'll be able to perform and have your body perfectly mapped and matched underwater with a school of little robotic fish mimicking your action perfectly. So this has application obviously in a creative sense, but it also has application in other military and exploration senses. And the possibility is, well, if I can do that there, can that translate? Can I do that? Can we start to look at mapping the body form in another type of space, say for instance, in outer space? So I started looking at a series of works or possibilities for connecting the altered gravity motion or the neutral buoyancy position of the body and the position of the body in a microgravity environment on the International Space Station or inside a shuttle, and starting to look at some of the countermeasure activities, whether that's, in this case, you have astronauts using a resistive bicycle to deter against muscle loss. Here you have an astronaut who is looking at mindfulness in microgravity, and there you have an aquanaut just looking at mindfulness in a neutral buoyancy position, and just comparing the differences. So stripping back some of the robotics and going into a human form, I was starting to look at how I could place my own body yet again, into another space analog environment. And I created an expedition called Bending Horizons, which commenced earlier this year, which was part of a series from sea to summit to space. And I had looked at creating artworks at various increments, going up all the way to the summit of Mount Everest at 8,848 metres. And I commenced earlier, but only at this point reached Everest Base Camp in early April of 2015. There I was able to start the acclimatization process. I was there for scheduled there for about 10 days before climbing began, before the blessing of our equipment to climb. There was an incredible snowfall. So I'd already trekked from Lukla to Everest Base Camp, looking glamorous there, a little bit sunburned, and starting to map the body shift and the body change. So just as I would in a diving situation, starting to understand the change in physiology, the change in psychology, change in basic performance and the metrics of my performance, whether that was heart rate whether that was oxygen saturation levels, whether that was mental capability, fatigue, but also mapping it in a creative sense, starting to document the work through using partly technology, but also using creative expression to understand it. Now, my intention was that I would network and link back points of insight into the discovery along the way back to an audience, so that I could share something of that human experience to a remote audience. And if I could do that from a location like this, a space analog environment, then potentially there are some lessons learned or some understandings that could be gained for looking at an alpine region like this as a potential space analog simulation environment or training environment. As yet, only Scott Paraminsky is the only astronaut to have summited Mount Everest. But unfortunately, it became quite a black day as I faced the Gorkha earthquakes, and I was able, luckily, fortunately, to be able to come back to Australia alive and well. So that journey will commence another day. But I'm interested in continuing on, not only looking at what we can do in low Earth orbit or in orbit of our planet, but also looking at interplanetary exploration and even interstellar exploration, and using creative form and gesture to begin and to initiate some of the imagination required for that, but also to parallel that with the technical training that it needs to be undertaken through simulations, through exams and learning, through analog environment training and so on. I also earlier this year joined a group of people called Project POSSUM. POSSUM stands for the Polar Suborbital Space Science in the Upper Mesosphere, and it's a particular project to go up into the outer atmosphere. Here you have a candidate who's training in a simulation here, and one of the vehicles that will potentially be used for undertaking some of the G-force against the body preparation for that. But the particular mission is going up to look at these macular lucid cloud formations in the upper mesosphere, and basically going up through the clouds, coming back down in an arc, and documenting them, much like we would document an MRI of the body, taking visual spectrometry, meeting imaging of the clouds themselves, and being able to bring back data that we've been unable to obtain so far, to understand more of the climate science and the changes that are occurring and increasingly occurring at that time. So here's a fun final proposal, looking at an astronaut here, looking out into a view, into an artwork back at Earth. This was developed by Liquid Systems as a projection of performance, so between myself and the International Space Station. And here's also another view of a potential habitat, another group that I work with Icarus Interstellar, looking at, we have a 100-year, we're part of the 100-year Starship project, hoping to create interstellar flight by the year 2100. So bear with me just 1 minute. So that's a really rapid fire version, I guess, of the kind of work that I have been doing in over a number of years. So you've got snippets of projects over maybe a 15-year project timeframe, maybe a little longer. But it gives you an introduction into some of the work that I'm doing, some of the physical training, some of the really creative and fun, almost science fiction sides of performing, but also some of the technical aspects and the performative aspects. So I'll leave it with you. I can't hear you at this stage. I don't have any feedback, but I'll pass it on to you, and I look forward to your questions and your interaction soon. Thank you.
Great. So I'm gonna get you back. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn my light on. So that was Sarah Jumper from Australia, and I'm going to make a presentation, and then it will be Jordan. Okay, so maybe you should pick it up from here. We are going to go from this one. Hello, Sarah. Do you hear us?
Okay.
Actually, everybody can see you. So, do you see us? Can you see us? Sarah, do you see us?
Yes, hello.
Okay, so everybody seems everybody has enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. It was a bit quick.
And so now I'm going to present as well. So I'm going to keep you on Skype if you want to stay on mute. And is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so stay online. All right. Maybe I'm going to put some lights on my face. All right. So we're going to keep Sarah in the corner. No, maybe it's distracting. All right. So do you guys hear me well? Does it sound good? Okay. Okay, so my name is Cesar Harada. I'm going to use it for about 7 minutes. It's going to be quite brief. And I'm going to actually talk about quite an old work of mine. So this work I'm going to present to you tonight, I think it's really fitting the topic tonight, is the International Ocean Station. So let me take you at the beginning. Why did I start designing the International Ocean Station? So, yes?
We should see you. Do you want to turn it so she
You can see us on the left here. Actually, maybe it could be better. It could be better frames. Yeah, actually it was open. Yeah, I think it's actually was good. Yeah. Okay, so that's the live stream. Good. So good. You can see the live stream. Okay, so that's the project that actually started with the name Open Sailing. So it was my family project, and I was looking at mapping all the potential scenarios that will bring the end to the world. And if you think about it, every potential scenarios of the end of the world have a geographical location. Every event that could end the world can actually be put on a map. So essentially like a map of all the potential things that could end the world. So for example, there will be pandemics, so there's too high human population, or when there's potential nuclear accidents, so where all the power plants are located, when there are tsunami or earthquakes, when the land is too dry, or when you have an actual war, when the countries are at war. So if you add all the locations in the world that could bring this kind of end of the world scenario, there are very few places that especially don't be around other people. Other people are dangerous. And so that is a very dark picture of the world. And so we actually created this software with Hiromi Ozaki, which basically was combining all these variables, and they're operating a swarm, what we call a swarm operating system. So you run articles, so you imagine a living animal. They're trying to constantly find the safest place on Earth. So imagine each of these yellow points is trying to find the safest place. And so what's interesting with this geographical search engine is that it works for threats, and also for things that are good. You can also attract yourself to software or nice people. And here we mapped actually all the different types of music that are playing in London. So we use the API of Time Magazine, and each color represents a different musical style, jazz or hip hop or rock or punk. And basically, software sense operation to tell you where you want to go in the city, depending on what music you want to listen to. So we made different iterations of the software, and you could recharge the swarm. You could also design and define the level of collaboration. So if you think to survive with others, then you would have a high level of collaboration. If you think that it's actually good to decide which other to survive, because you have limited access to resources, for example, then there will be a reason why you would want to collaborate. So after looking at this way of looking for a location, which tells us there should be in the ocean, we looked at where can we live in the ocean. And it turns out that we've done a lot of research on that. We went at the Center for Surviving the Deep Sea in France. It's a center that's dedicated for people who are victims of rights or people who are living year-round in an orbit, for example. So they need to learn the techniques to survive at sea for a very long time. So we went for training with the people from people. And studying in the library, we found that every technology today exists to live in the ocean. If you want to live in the ocean for a very long time, you need to be able to make stuff, produce your own energy, you need to be able to move, to protect yourself, to provide your own water and your own food. And each of these things has actually a lot of different technological options to do this.
So when we say we want to live at sea, and we want to do it well, comfortably, sustainably, and safely. We want delicious food, a great social life, space to work and play. Open sailing. We want to live at sea, and we want to do it well, comfortably, sustainably, and safely. We want delicious food, a great social life, space to work and play. We've come together, a diverse team from all walks of life, to design our future on the ocean. With our combined skills, we're pioneering innovative architecture, navigation, and seed farming techniques. So how does it work? 1. Instinctive architecture. At the core of open sailing is instinctive architecture. Open sailing behaves like an intelligent living organism, reacting to the conditions around it. When the conditions are good, we spread out in harvests. Open sailing automatically occupies the largest space possible with its nets and harvesting facilities to reap the ocean rewards. When the conditions are dangerous and stormy, open sailing compacts itself into a tight, dense craft, deepening its reach and using the less important surrounding elements to dispel the energy of waves. When we want to move, open sailing stretches for the maximum speed, using ocean currents and winds to move efficiently. Nets are raised while kites carry the vessel along in the water. Nomadic ecosystem. We are at one with the sea, inhabiting not one large object, but many small, independent units that form a superorganism. Each unit performs a different function, such as harvesting fresh water, energy, fishes, plankton and algae, or providing space for leisure. In return, we enrich the life of the ocean itself. Unlike mothballs coated with polluted anti-fouling paint, we actively encourage marine life to become part of us. Instead of holding vegetables and animals in captivity, we create a favorable open environment. Open sailing is a nomadic ecosystem. 3. Swarm operating system. Modern boats have GPS, radar, VHF radio that inform them about where they are and basic data around them. Open sailing is a fleet of floating objects that uses swarm operating system, a computing program that fits in real-time attractors, resources, places of interest, as well as anti-attractors. Natural catastrophes, political instability, pollution, as customizable parameters. The swarm operating system suggests the safest nice locations, as well as the general urbanistic structure, a way to manage people's desires and fears, resources, and social activities. 4. Energy animal. Now we have to integrate it for renewable resources of energy. OpenSailing uses energy animal that generates electricity simultaneously using wind, solar, and wave power. We produce energy continuously, whatever the weather. 5. Live cable. We are developing one single standard cable that can safely provide us energy, water, waste management, and data. This has a huge potential for construction industries in the developing world, as well as application for outer space. Perspective. We already have an international space station. OpenSailing is designed as the first stage toward reaching a series of international ocean stations, so that we can develop technologies, host experiments, and learn from the oceans that cover the majority of our beautiful planet. All of OpenSailing's hardware and software design is open source, so anybody can use for greater good. Right now, we are designing an ocean train. In April, we are building our first prototype. In May, we're sailing and testing OpenSailing 01 at sea. And in June, we are presenting our experimentation results. We are still looking for collaborators and sponsors. The best way to predict our future is to invent it. OpenSailing.
This was my final project, and actually with this project, which started a very pointed illustration, actually we won the Ars Electronica Golden Eagle, which is an important prize at the intersection of art and science, which means that they were going to give us money. So the contract was saying that we need 30,000 euros. But actually, I didn't read the contract good enough. Actually, they were meaning that they were going to give us 15,000 for us as the artist fee, and 15,000 to themselves for production of our work. So there was a misunderstanding. I thought that being the artist, I would in charge of producing my own work, but apparently when it's a production, it was for them. And so I didn't understand that, and decided to actually design it, and then we built by military engineers that did submarines, so they said the design was good. We started to see where we could anchor it before we parked. We started to be an engineering of it and count every single piece of metal that we go into it. Started to design every piece of the module. We actually built a small model to try the mechanics of the machine. So that was a small model. And then we built a much bigger one here. So we did just a wooden one to try mechanical resistance of the structure. So that was the build one day to see if it would resist. And then we decided to build for real. So we built the structure that's going to turn diameter, 7 tons of steel that we have installed and started assembling it. So that means we have a full team of welder and engineering that we are building the structure. We're expecting to ship it. So we have this giant factory. It was maybe 5 times bigger in the space now. And it was in North London. And so we're basically building the international ocean station for 15,000 euros. And so everybody was a volunteer. We had a group of about 40 researchers around the world, not construction engineers, everybody was working as a volunteer, so the whole budget was going to materials. So it was super exciting. We were ready to ship. We started to put in the container, and they told us, look, you're not going to ship this. And so we had the international ocean station version 0.1 in a container in London, and we had no to ship. So that was 2009. And we had to ship it straight to the recycling place. We didn't have any budget left to actually test it in the water. So all the research and the project was testing never was testing. So it was hardworking. It was pretty much half a year of like 4 people worked team. So I was very, very sad. But you are sitting now at Megaday, and my intention is after Megaday is well up and running, and after we're financially sustainable to get back to this research effort. So this research that I had to stop all of a sudden 2009, I really hope to start again at the same time. And so you're sitting in a space that has been designed by the community, so we designed different options, we proposed it to Facebook or Twitter, we had some feedback on how we should arrange the layout, and this is exactly what we're seeing now. So we hope that the space, providing the space between the community will be this kind of space where these experiments and many others that Jordan was going to explain will hopefully take place, crazy dreams. So if you go behind the screen, you have lots of tools. So my current project is developing shape-shifting selling robot. It's a new type of robot that can change shape, so you can control it by changing the shape of it. But I won't go too much deep into it. So also modular selling robots. So they are both that are built like trains. And we're also doing terrestrial robots that are wind powered as well. So as a platform to test this assumption of shape-shifting robots. Also on a very large scale. So it's 6.5 meters, uses very, very low energy. And here, I'm personally very interested to explore the ocean to study the different types of pollution that are in the ocean and threaten the health of the ocean. If you go on TED.com, I have a TED talk that's new, that was just on yesterday. And right now I'm not on the front page telling you what, if you go on the second page, you will see this TED talk is 7 minutes. And this TED talk represents research that we're doing with the kids on how to study the plastic pollution in the ocean, oil pollution in the ocean, and radioactivity around the Fukushima nuclear power plants. So I want to keep our presentation quite short, so that's it. So the conclusion for me is this image. So I had this meeting with Professor Masubushi at MIT, who is a professor of ocean engineering. He grew up during the war, Second World War in Japan, and he was a steel engineer in charge of welding of large ships. When the US started to build the International Space Station, he became the welder-in-chief of the International Space Station. And so he basically welded the International Space Station together. And he once told me that the most important thing is not to look for big dreams, but to try to make always yourself a better person. Actually, he said he never wanted to do great things. He always worked on himself very hard just to learn and to do the best thing that was humanly achievable. But he only told you one grand thing out of all the very long day discussion we had, is that he looked at me with these shiny eyes and he told me, you know, I stopped space science because ocean is the next frontier. He told me the unpredictability and the power of the ocean is far way more complex and hard than space. He said that the space is big, empty, and cold and predictable. When you're somewhere in space, you can pretty much know what are the conditions. When you're in the ocean, you can have a storm. The impact of waves can be up to 20 tons per square meters. When you deploy a solar panel out of a satellite, you can deploy a giant structure out of a tiny arm. The forces in space are very, very different if you are in space, not very close to the planet. So for me, that's my conclusion, is that space and ocean are very, very close together, but I believe that ocean is next frontier. You might be out of form of it. That's from KJ. So that's it. Thanks very much. Sarah, do you see us? Okay. So thanks. So I'm putting you on Skype, so you can see Jordan right here. Do you see? You cannot hear. Oh, okay. You cannot. Oh, can you hear us? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to leave you to see Jordan. Jordan, do you want to add more lights or effects?
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to get right to it, even though I'll run a little bit late, so my name is Jordan McRae. And I'm going to start with this proposition. There are only two types of people in this world. Only two, not three, not four, but two. And I'll make a caveat, which is when it comes to the future of humanity. So, very serious topic, two types of people. Only two. Remember that, because this will be a test after. Two. Those two types of people are either a space person or you're an ocean person. The space group, you know if you're in the space group. you're with this guy. And if the group is pretty diverse right now, so normally you wouldn't need like the room full of like maybe 8 each, you don't have to spend. This is Elon Musk. This is his future space that he's building, amongst everything else that he's building, electric cars, rockets, etc. So if you're a space guy, you're aligned with this guy. Essentially, you know very clearly, you know other space guys. The space guy thinking is that for the future of humanity, we've already pretty much lost out on the survival of humanity on this planet. So our next best option is to find another planet and colonize that planet, and that is the only way that humanity is going to survive. So that's what Steve Hawking believes, that's what Elon Musk believes when he wants to colonize Mars, is for the future of humanity. Now the ocean guys, that's not as obvious to pick out, because the ocean guys essentially believe that we can save this planet, we love this planet. And that's not, you don't so obviously, connect the Earth and the future humanity on Earth with the ocean, but that's essentially what it boils down to. You think about the fact that the future humanity relies on solving issues of climate change, that immediately brings you down to what's happening with the ocean. The ocean is our reservoir for everything. It's CO2, it controls the weather patterns, it is the future of humanity. Even if you take that away and you think about how are we going to feed the billions of people that are to come, how are we going to, where are those people going to live? The ocean is. So there's two groups. You're either, when it comes to future humanity, you're either space or you're ocean. So I'll leave it to you to figure out which one you are, but two groups. And probably some of you are thinking, well, space is pretty cool, ocean's pretty cool, why can't I be both? You can't. You have to pick one. There's no like sitting on the sidelines, there's no cheating. You as an individual have to pick whether or not you're for the ocean or you're for space. You already know where Caesar's at, so that already gives you a reference. Now, one way that you can cheat is you make a company that does both. So Aqua 23 is a company that focuses on ocean, space, and climate change. And the climate change is sort of the mix between the two. And so if you take me, I'm an ocean guy. I love the ocean, I want to be in the ocean, I think the ocean is the key to humanity. My co-founder is a space geek. He wants to go into space, he wants to explore, he wants to find new planets. My co-founder, James Park. So we have a company that is dedicated to developing technologies for space, for ocean, for climate change. And what we believe is that what we believe for our company, for our vision, is that we want to solve the grand challenges of tomorrow. So what's the grand challenges? Those are, how do we solve how to feed people in the future, where they're going to live? How do we solve the climate change issue, air pollution on a daily basis? Some of these are problems of today, and they're going to be even worse tomorrow. And some of these are problems like clean drinking water. For us, maybe not so much of a problem, but it will be. Trust me, it will be. And for other people around the world, it already is. So we're interested in how we develop technologies. That's what we're passionate about. All along the way to solve these great challenges. And so we've given ourselves a mega challenge to give us direction. So that mega challenge for us is colonizing Europa in 2050. So Europa is one of Jupiter's moons. And the reason why we picked that sort of poetic is Europa is one of the sort of chosen planets in terms of possibility of there being life on that planet, possibility of us being able to adapt to that planet. We don't know because we really don't know that much about it. But what we do know is it's in space and it has an ocean. We believe that there is a liquid ocean underneath the ice layer on Europa. So that is Europa. It's not that beautiful, it's not as pretty as our planet, but it fits the grand challenge. So that's the future. That's what we're looking for. That's the kite that's pulling us towards grand vision. What we're doing today is developing particular technologies that bring us there on the way. So I'll discuss, for the context of our discussion, I'll talk about two projects. One of them is Ultrascope. The second one is OptiTalk. So for Ultrascope, I'll give you a bit of context. So this is a map of where are all of the ADOs, near-Earth objects, so essentially an asteroid that comes close enough to the atmosphere or even gets through the atmosphere of the Earth to be considered a near-Earth object. These near-Earth objects, if any of you have watched the movie like Armageddon, you know exactly what a near-Earth object, why it's important. And the answer is not animals, it's the survival of humanity. Right? So this is a map, but in the last 20 years, the impacts from near-Earth objects and the size of the circles are the amount of energy that impact represents. And as a reference, and so there's a scale down at the bottom, but I've circled a few, which in between these two sizes, the 10,000 gigajoules and the 100,000, that's the equivalent of the bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. So 20 years impacts on our planet the size of nuclear bombs. The reason why, you know, we don't feel in the same way that we would with nuclear bombs is because these things explode up in our upper atmosphere. But if they're big enough and if they're fast enough, NASA believes, and scientists believe that we could be looking at a second ice. So it's a very important challenge. So this is where Ultrascope comes in. Ultrascope is a robotic observatory, or an autonomous robotic observatory. It's essentially a robotic telescope using today's technology, fully open source. So the idea is that NASA has these very expensive, very big telescopes out in space that are monitoring near objects and asteroids, but they can't monitor them all. So our concept, our idea is, why don't we put the ability in the hands of citizens, of people like you and I, major spaces, to build their own telescopes capable of monitoring and tracking asteroids and near objects. Instead of having 3 or 4 out of space, you have 100,000 or 200,000. And not just in North America or in Europe, but all over the world. So there's an aspect there that NASA really likes, which is that we be filling the gap in the southern sky. Because right now there's no one in Africa looking up into the sky for near objects. They have bigger problems to take care of. So our solution, and I'll get to the slide with you for actual technology. Our solution is this robotic telescope. So the essential, it's fairly simple. It looks complicated, but it actually is fairly simple. It's designed to maximize the use of 3D printed parts and laser cut parts. We use a smartphone instead of the optical viewfinder. So the smartphone allows us to have the internet connectivity, whether we're out in the field with 3G or 4G, or close to a building or observatory with Wi-Fi. It gives us GPS location. It also gives us a camera. So now smartphones have gotten to the point, like the Nokia Lumia, which is what we use for our prototype testing, that has a 20 megapixel camera. So that's definitely good enough for us to take very interesting images of celestial bodies with the telescope. We use an Arduino Mega plus a custom motor shield that we developed to actuate the telescope. And then we use a Raspberry Pi for the algorithms on board. Right now, the main algorithm is the asteroid tracking. So with internet connectivity, we're connected to NASA's Minor Planetary Center. We get all the data about asteroids in real time. And the algorithm on the Raspberry Pi allows us to track the asteroids. So it's what we communicate with NASA, which is sort of a virtual partner, is and a lot of the other maker spaces that we deal with. It's an asteroid hunting telescope. So what's the user experience with an asteroid hunting telescope? There's 2 ways that you can think about it. One is I would call the autonomous mode, and the second is semi-autonomous. Autonomous essentially means that you built your telescope, you receive the kit of the optics, the motor, the Arduino, the shield, and you have like an IKEA or Lego style instruction set that tells you with one tool how you put together these 3D printed parts. So now you've got your scope out on your porch or your backyard, and you go to work the next morning. And on your smartphone, you see the message on the Ultrascope app that says, detected an asteroid in your sector. Do you wish to accept the mission to track it? You say yes, and at home, your asteroid tracking Ultrascope will orient itself into the night sky. And when that asteroid comes through, it will take video and image data of that asteroid and upload that back up to the NASA Planetary Center. Now, NASA has, or not just NASA, but any sort of planetary or space organization, ESA in Europe. These organizations now have enough data to create what's called light path. They get to learn different characterization details about the asteroid. Is it lumpy? Does it have an iron core? Has it changed from its orbital path that we imagined it to have? So that's autonomous mode. You didn't have to do anything. You click the button, you said, okay, I accept the mission, and PostScope goes all the way. Semi-autonomous mode is a little bit more fun. These things are connected to the internet. They have fully robotic control. So that means that you could sign into the PostScope web app that we created, and you sign into a web app. So there we had sign into PostScope. There we had a scope in Spain. I signed into the scope, and now I have full remote control of this scope in Spain. So I can be sitting on my couch in my pajamas on a Sunday morning, and I realized that there's something really cool going on in the south of Spain, and there's a scope available. So I log into it, I check out, and I've got a live stream now of the southern sky, or the sky in Spain. And then what I can do is, through the web app, access the database of the different celestial objects that are available from that point of view in the night sky. So the data within the database, within the web app, will be filtered through. And so, for instance, one of the things that we looked at a couple weeks ago from Spain was Vesta, which is one of the asteroids in the main asteroid belt. So I select that object, and now I decide that I'm going to track that object, and I want to take the characterization images of that object. And so what will happen is when I say, yes, accept this mission, or not mission, but accept this object to track, then you go back into autonomous mode. The telescope will track the Vesta through the night sky as long as it can, doing 4-second exposure images. And then once it gets about 6 or 7 of these images, that's enough to put into one cohesive image that we can upload it to the Ultrascope database. Why is this interesting? So again, we have these expensive, super performing telescopes in that sky, but they can't track all the asteroids all the time. They also only have one point of view for these asteroids. So there's something really interesting that can happen when you have multiple telescopes looking at the same object from different points of view. And even if they're not as performing they don't have the same level of performance as these, because the telescopes having more data from a different point of view allows you to do data fusion. It gives you more interesting information about the object. So this is when we talk about citizen science. This is that aspect of citizen science. We're empowering citizens and everyday people, not just scientists, but everyday people, to contribute to the scientific experiment, which is characterizing asteroids. And to do that, we have to build a community. So the first step in building that community, we created what's called the Open Space Agency. So the Open Space Agency is completely dedicated to building projects like Ultrascope. 100% open source, and dedicated to both anything oriented towards space technologies. The second part of that is you have to give incentives, you have to make it fun. So essentially we've gamified asteroid hunting. So there's a system of badges that help you all along the way, guide you, and allow you to achieve the super level of asteroid hunting. So maybe you first start out kind of like in the Scouts, you build your scope, you get your first badge. Then you start doing more and more interesting things. You evolve the scope, you find more interesting things, and you contribute more interesting data. You start accumulating badges, showing them, sharing them on the community platform. So that's Ultrascope. So to sort of summarize, we have the technology, we have the data and the software platform, which allows us to link all of these citizen scientists and allows them to participate in the citizen science experiment. And to bring that all together, we have to create a community. So all that stuff will come very important to the discussion after all of this. So second example, if I try to put it in a similar structure, in a similar form, is Aquatop. So if we go back to what's the context of Aquatop, the first part of the context is what's happening with the ocean today. It's getting hot, there's too much plastic, the pH levels are such that we have.
So you may have the lights on because you're beautiful.
Okay.
I don't even see you. Sorry.
So we have these dead zones, which is essentially called like over-acidification in the ocean. And one of the things that's interesting for me and what has guided the technology of Octotalk is a lot of this is happening in aquatic environments that are off the coast of developing countries. And so that means that it's those developing countries that are typically responsible for managing and solving issues in that location. They do not have resources to do that. So the second aspect of that context is that on the sort of, right, I think the front, the leading pack of people solving these problems are the scuba divers and the scientists and the ocean conservationists that are scuba diving every day to do coral reef monitoring, to take measurements in the ocean. And at the moment, there's only a few hand signals that they use to communicate. There are some technologies that allow people to talk underwater, but they're primarily, because of their expense point, they're primarily used only by the oil and gas industry and military. So these scientists, especially in developing countries where they don't have those resources, these scientists are literally using like 5 different hand signs to describe whatever it is that they're thinking at the time, or they're just trying to remember for 45 minutes, whatever it is, what they thought or what they've seen. So imagine you doing your job tomorrow morning, and for the entire day, and I know there's some people you prefer not to talk to, but imagine doing your job tomorrow morning and you could not talk throughout the entire time that you were interacting with the team. It would be virtually impossible. And so, lack of communication is a huge barrier in terms of doing any, exploring, learning, and working in an underwater environment. So that was the inspiration behind Octotalk. Octotalk is a wireless underwater digital communication system that uses visible light for the medium of communication. I'll explain that. This is a prototype. This is sort of the looks like with a little bit of the functional aspects in the prototype using some existing mass technology. The essential idea is that there's 3 basic innovations in the Octotalk scuba diving nets. The first is the visible light transceiver. So why visible light? It's because RF signals like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, these types of digital communication mediums that we're used to do not work on the water. They get absorbed almost immediately by the water due to their higher frequency. But visible light actually does pass through water. It also gets absorbed by the water. But depending upon the frequency of light, it can pass through water. This is why when you dive, the further down you go, the more blue-greenish things become. And that's because the blue-greenish wavelength of light travels the deepest it gets absorbed, depending upon the consistency of the water. So that's another important part of Octotalk, is that it has a automated feedback loop algorithm in the system to allow it to adjust the wavelength of light depending upon the consistency of the water. So it turns out in clear water, blue-green light travels the farthest. In water that has a lot of particles in it, red light travels the farthest. So depending upon the consistency of the water that you're diving in, we're developing an algorithm that will allow us to optimize for that environment. So that's the first innovation. Second innovation is you either cannot or it's very not good to have things in your ear when you're scuba diving, just due to equalization. So we've begun investigating what's called bone conduction technology. So you're probably used to bone conduction in the sense of having an earphone. There's been a couple of consumer products out in the market where you can use bone conduction as an earphone. Bone conduction, essentially the way it works is that if you think about, or you can even test it right now, so you put your fingers in your ear and you talk, you can hear yourself. Even if you couldn't hear me right now, you can hear yourself. What's happening is the vibrations that you're creating from the voice are traveling through the bones in your face, and they're registering in your inner ear. So your ear basically just acts as a funnel to funnel the sound into that inner ear. But if you have vibrations in the bones of your face, it can also register in your ear. So why is this important? This is like our magic part. I honestly believe that any kind of technology or invention or innovation, there has to be some aspect of magic. It has to be indistinguishable from magic, as Paul said. So this is the magic part. You've got nothing in your ear. You put a mask on your face, and as soon as someone starts talking to you, you're going to hear this voice inside your head, in your inner ear. Because you can hear everything else in the water. You've got nothing inside your ear. You've got this third voice in your inner ear. It's pretty tricky. I suggest you try it out. And then the third thing is the full face. So it works both ways, and that's the innovation of, sorry, to go back to the bone conduction, it works both ways. You have the ability to vibrate on your bones, and that will send sound to your inner ear. The sort of breakthrough that we've had recently with optical speech, we can reverse that as well. So we can also use bone conduction as a microphone. When you talk, you register the vibrations in your face, and you use that as a microphone to pick up your voice from that. And then the third innovation, or the third aspect of the mask, is we have to have, we're developing a full face mask. So this has a couple of advantages. One, just because you have more visibility, but two, it frees up your mouth so that you can talk good, which is a huge thing. It does come with a bunch of different challenges as well, because we've got to look at how you clear the mask, like what Simon was talking about earlier. Also how we do equalization, these types of things. So this is just at its basic functionality, the objective of OctoTalk has been, and will be, to allow people to communicate underwater. As soon as we got to this point, and especially when we had this breakthrough with the bone conduction technology, we realized there's a whole lot of other things that we can do. If people are excited enough to put this mask on their face and let us send vibrations through the bones in their face and talk using light and water, there's also a lot of things that we can embed in that mask. There's a lot of things that we can do. The first thing is that since we already have a means to put this inner voice in your head, we don't have to use it just for the voice communication between you and diving or snorkeling. We can also use that to give you real-time voice audio updates or sort of voice assistant. So usually the way that I do this at a dinner party is I either ask you, are you an Apple person or an Iron Man person? The reason why I ask that is the best way to understand that is either Jarvis or it's Siri. The idea that you have this real-time voice in your head that says, you are now at 25 meters. You have 75% air capacity, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, code name for her is Zara. That voice. But we can also do it in the other direction, right? Instead of just having a voice come in at this third voice. One of the awesome advantages of the bone conduction is we're picking up just the vibrations from the face, which means that we're not picking up any of the other ambient noise that surrounds you, which a normal microphone will do. And one thing that we're really excited about that is that a lot of people are trying to crack this technology of voice control of machines, or voice control of human-to-machine audition. One of the key challenges of that is how you filter out all the ambient noise. Because once you actually get the clear speech to a machine, it's actually pretty easy to understand the command. It's pretty easy to interpret an audio command. The real challenge is how do you separate that from all the other people talking in the environment, parrotfish crunching on coral reefs and things like that. Usually software is being used to do that. And that means that you need real-time processing and you have delays, etc. If you can eliminate all of that noise just with the hardware alone, that opens all new doors for human-to-machine interaction. So we envision this sort of enabling people to easily do underwater drone control or controlling other objects underwater. The idea there between these two things, the voice control, voice assistant, and voice control, is to take you away from constantly looking at this and looking at all the awesomeness that's in front of you. It's to be an assistant to what you do. And then the final thing is, we've got this technology, we convinced you to allow us to send vibrations through your face, to stick this technology on the side of your head. Why not pack it full of a bunch of other things that you wouldn't even recognize were there? Temperature sensors, so then pH sensors, depth sensors, pressure sensors. This is interesting for you, but it's also super, super interesting for us. So we've done something fairly tricky here. With Ultrascope, it was very clearly and openly citizen science experiment. Like knew what you were doing when you got into it. Here, we tell you on the awesome story of being able to talk to people on the water, having this personalized assistant while you're diving, and having all of this data that you can collect for yourself. You get out of the dive, and you can synchronize to your smartphone, and you have it all there. But that information is also super interesting to us and to other people that are doing ocean conservation research. Why? Because it means that thousands and thousands of people are going to be diving 35 minutes to 45 minutes at a time and acting as essentially human sensor vehicles for us, to giving us a sort of health index of the ocean each time that they go down. So it's a citizen science experiment, but not with the same model as this open source project that I just described before. Applications, and this is how we get to those thousands of people in the water. The applications, they're linked to training, they're linked to just a simple, commercial pool or beach tour with kids or adults, guided tours in ecological zones or eco tours, sports training, emergency response, and underwater inspection construction. So we see it being used in a lot of different applications. The same platform, same technology. And then finally, the long-term vision. Why are we using light? So sound actually travels pretty well in the water. The difficulty is that sound has a really, what we call a really low bandwidth. So right now you can send audio data and sound, but you can't send video data. Look at the picture. So this is the future. This is where we believe that OctoTalk is going. Something that we call OctoNet for the moment. But it's essentially the oceanic internet. Once we get to the point where we have more distance, when we're really doing this human-to-machine interaction, the intention is not to stop there. There's also machine-to-machine interaction as well. So the idea is to basically completely immerse the ocean in this type of technology, this light technology that allows us to have remote sensors, that allows us to have groups talking to each other, ROVs and AUVs talking to workers, allows us to monitor aquaculture installations. The entire ecosystem that we're very used to here, whenever anyone talks about the Internet of Things or connected objects, they do it without even thinking about the fact that that's only possible because of the amazing infrastructure of radio that we have on land. So it's equivalent. And so I'll finish and try and kind of open up the discussion with this question. So these two projects kind of being an example. One of the things that James and I talked about last night when I was discussing this panel was, what was the question that we had? What was the question that was a big concern for us and we wanted to throw to the crowd? And this is that question: is how do we replace this lone inventor? Most people now have come to terms with the lone inventor is a myth, but somehow we're still very much attached to it. And so how do we? The reason why we're attached to this is because it is true that typically it takes that one individual or a couple of individuals with enough courage or enough endurance or enough ego to fight through what you would call the invention barrier. That barrier that most people would just walk away from and say, okay, it's not possible, it's too hard, or whatever. It's simply those unique individuals, those outliers that pierce through that barrier. And that's why we love it so much, and that's why we built this huge myth around it. But the question is, how do we replace that myth? How do we replace that lone inventor and empower a community of makers or a community of inventors together to pierce through that barrier? So that was our question. Amongst many other questions that I'm sure we'll have. Thanks.
So we're going to open for the floor. Sorry, it's been longer than expected. I just want to ask, anybody has to go very quickly, or is it quite open-ended for everyone? Okay, that's because that means quite open-ended for everyone. I'm going to bring back Sarah on the Skype on the big screen. So Sarah, yeah. Sarah is here. So we're going to put you back on the big screen, and you will appear in a second. There we go. And you're going to be able to see the audience as well right here. Do you see the audience? Good. I'm going to give you your microphone back. So can you speak? Can you speak up?
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, great. So you're not facing the audience. I won't be able to carry you around, but I hope you can hear what you say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to upload 2 questions. So, any questions?
How do you solve the record office going up and down
I think the question is, how do you solve the fact that your mouth is moving?
Yeah.
With the mask on?
Pretty rigid.
So the exterior part of the mask is rigid, but then there is a seal, like a normal silicone seal that you typically have with the goggles. And then we also have masks, it's a commercial product actually, where you have a silicone seal that fits to most people's faces. So there's usually a small, medium size and a large size that gets about 98%.
This is for Sarah. I read a lot of sci-fi and see a lot of sci-fi movies, and I'd never heard of the concept of space choreography before, so I thought that was an awesome new concept that had certainly never occurred to me, but I'd never even seen it. When do you think the first performance will be, either in free space or like International Space Station or wherever, and is anyone actually pushing that forward to become a reality in the near future?
Well, yes, I guess we've already had a number of performances so far. So a number of astronauts and cosmonauts have performed with musical instruments and they have sung. We've also had Guy Liberté, the private space flight participant or a space tourist, who is the director of Cirque du Soleil. So he was the first artist in space. He paid to travel for 12 days in 2012, I believe. And there he performed an incredible work that was called, basically it was a promotional work to raise awareness for his foundation, the One Drop Foundation. And he networked the performance from the International Space Station all around the globe. So he had Cirque du Soleil performers, other performers on 14 different continents. And as the International Space Station went around every 90 minutes, they were linking into a different city and telling a different part of the story. There have also been a number of artists, particularly from the early 1980s right through the 90s, who have worked in microgravity conditions, in parabolic flight. So Kitsu Dubois, the MIA research group, the microgravity interdisciplinary research group, Bradley Pitts from the US, he's performed in microgravity naked with his eyes shut and his ears blocked, simply for trying to understand the experience of the pure sensory experience for itself, without having some other utilitarian reason for that, to try and get at the essence of that. Whereas others, divers, performers, aerialists, have all been playing in that space. But if you ask me, I'd still like to be the first artist in space. That's it.
Great, thanks.
The question is for Jordan. How many ultrascopes are there out there and where are they?
So we have right now 5 ultrascope prototypes. One is in South Africa, one is in London. There's usually one with me in Paris, but it's doing like this rock star tour right now. So it's actually, it was just at the White House. So last week was the National Astronomy Day. So Obama was out on the lawn, like in and out with all of the amateur astronomers, we didn't want them. So that was cool. So I think that one's out in New York, but we'll probably go back to Paris with you. And there's one in one of our sort of biggest front runner makers is based in Utah. So he's built as well. What's weird about, not weird, but interesting about the ultrascope is that we're not even really out of the beta release yet. We've talked and communicated and interacted with the communities, but we did a very small alpha release just to get very focused sort of feedback on the building. And we did kind of like a pre-beta, which is essentially we're like, well, in the meantime, we'll throw up some information, we'll put in a mailing address, what do you call that? Email list. And we got like 2,000 people that signed up before we actually launched the beta. So we're hoping to launch the very first sort of beta release kit and start building by the
Follow-up question to that. So following that, you mentioned that one is in Paris, because my question when you were describing it was, does this have to be in some place with no light pollution?
So it's just like any other telescope. It's much better if you don't have light pollution. They do make filters to reduce the effects of that. But quite honestly, you probably do want to use it. You know what you're looking for. So it's all about the amount of light that you capture. Even in Paris, on a very clear day, you can see some pictures of the moon. You can see the ISS. You don't see features of the ISS, but you see the light of the ISS and you can get some close imagery. Vesta as well, you can see from the cities. The pollution actually just causes like edge to around the use of the quality of images that you get. Not as good. And then for other things, non-bright objects, you just don't see them at all. So it's better to be out in the countryside or in somewhere where there's a lot less pollution. But you can use it.
How much will that go for?
Someone say that again.
How much will the ultrasound?
Oh, it's a no.
How much will the ultrasound cost?
So our objective is to do a 10 times cost factor of a normal commercial body size, but automated telescope, not much to do that. Relatively cost about $5,000. So our objective for the kit is $500,000. Right now we're about there, but it depends on a lot of different things. Certainly, I think you can achieve that if you have access to somewhere like Nicobit. You can print or the parts. If you've got to order those things from a commercial provider, then that's going to cost. But our objective is to get sort of medium price for a builder of $500. Now, so that changes as we get more quantity, right? Once we get more people building ultrascopes, we can start making partnerships. We have a supplier right now in London that we're talking to source the objects for the telescope. So if we can make a deal with them to get volume pricing, then that would be less.
It's okay, I can speak. So maybe I was just sitting at the back, I couldn't really hear you. theory, but what is the main significance of developing such a telescope? That's an advanced question. Oh. So just to reiterate, maybe I can hear from all the way there, but I just want to ask what's the main significance of developing such a telescope?
To save the planet. Actually, that is kind of the answer. The idea is that, like I was explaining in the beginning, there's these very near objects. And so it's not so much of a apocalyptic scenario. You have two reasons. You have the fact that there is a present danger from these near objects that we need to understand more about. But then you also have this other side, sort of commercial side. Everyone's getting very crazy about the idea of, landing on an asteroid and mining that asteroid. 3D printing things on that asteroid. There's hundreds of startups that have now popped up just based off of that idea alone. And it's not a crazy or stupid idea. Asteroids carry some very interesting resources, and some of them resources that we do not have in abundance on Earth. But to do any of that, the first step is to actually know what's on or what's in that asteroid. And so when I talked previously about asteroid characterization, that would be the objective. Is getting more information about asteroids and near objects as they pass by, and knowing are they an iron core or bumpy or these other different characteristics that give us more insight about the asteroids. And then, so the reason, so that's the kind of context, that's the problem. The reason why the ultrascope in particular was created is because we believe that problem can be solved by making a platform that allows makers and people like you and I to participate in that, and making it easy as possible for people to build those telescopes and help in that characterization.
So, the type of model from the using is going to be like this one. And if you look at it, like 3 times ago, you didn't have the able to put that resolution right. So, as the resolution of mobile phones or cameras just increase, when we go further in looking at near Earth object, into the universe, and speed so. And if the camera, after most of the sensors have been moved, some of the models are not as well. So how are we going to make these things work together to space?
So the main, it's actually not the camera that gives us the ability to see farther, it's actually the optics. And the camera gives us basically the resolution of being able to see very, the resolution of the thing that we're looking at. So it's true that, and I should mention this, the size and the scale that you saw in the video and in the images, that's what we call the Ultrascope Explorer. And that has a physical limitation in terms of what we can see. So basically, if you think about it in distance, you can see to the main asteroid belt. We don't see much farther than the main asteroid belt. So that's the reason why I mentioned DESTA in the presentation. So that's a really good example of sort of the limitations of the Ultrascope. We have in the works what we call the Ultrascope Odyssey. The Ultrascope Odyssey is about 3 times bigger than the Ultrascope Explorer, with optics 3 times bigger. And that's when we really get into do asteroid tracking and near objects. But to the question of seeing beyond, it's funny, we haven't really thought about that, to be honest. I think pollution becomes a huge problem, and this is one of the key advantages of actually being off the planet to do that type of imagery. But we do have observatories on land that are able to see really far. I don't think it will be the separate motors that limit us, because we're using motors and separate motors, and those are the things that we do today. Question mostly would be the cost. I think if it was going to continue to be a community-based platform, it must be the cost of those technologies, and also for the camera, it wouldn't necessarily be as much the resolution, because resolution does follows that on. We have some amazing technology. It's the heat of the electronics. For real, these observatories, when they do imaging, they're they're cooling, they have active cooling systems. With any electronics comes with heat that we don't register, but this electronic heat ruins your imaging. If you're looking at something that precise with that phone. So I have a question. By raise of hands, ocean or space? So space. And ocean. That's not a lot of things. You didn't hear me?
But what about if you like an ocean of you want to describe it? How much you look at if you like defrost? You don't do that.
I'm cheating.
So I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, the question is, what is the current art experiment that really brings, or really you think is the best indicator of where space science is going? In art, that's happening and that's trying to inspire space, which one do you think is the most interesting and pushing the boundaries of space science? You don't hear me. What she said. So, I think it must be on views. Can you do that for me? It must be on views.
Thank you. Could you explain the question just one more time for me?
Sure. So the work that you're doing, if I understand,
Yes.
is performance science and looking at getting inspired between ocean performances and space performances.
Yes.
So what I'm asking is, in your work or the other artists' works, which one do you think in this art form or art experiments are the most inspiring and to your opinion will be pushing or anticipating the next big change in space science or ocean science? So if art is anticipation or a vision of the future, which experiment do you think are the most interesting now?
That was about 6 questions. All right. Look, I'm a big champion for artists being involved in exploration of any kind, particularly in space exploration, for the reasons that artists bring something very different to in terms of skills and that they transfer and insights that they transfer to the process. And we often work in parallel. We're asking similar questions. We're going through a similar process towards discovery. But we often claim a different part of the prize. In other words, we can work together in a mutual relationship towards discovery and collaboration towards discovery, but that which we value in the end point might be slightly different, or one side of the outcome that's valued by science or technology. I'm not sure if that was the question, but yes, I'm a big advocate for increasingly people from STEM and arts being involved in exploration for that reason. And the work that I find most inspiring is work that is live, work that is visceral, work that is what we formerly used to call blue sky research, which we are now calling black sky research, where you're going beyond the blue horizon into the black and thinking beyond that which we know, that which we can see, that which we can feel, and to preempt future scenarios. And there's a great deal of freedom in that. There's a lot of speculative fiction that goes with that as a research process, and that can open many new possibilities as well. So increasingly, with a little bit of courage and persuasion, there are more people involved in even undersea exploration who have background in dance, background in media design, all sorts of things that are allowing or they have the freedoms now to bring those type of practices into the domain to explore them. So interesting things are happening there as much as they are in space.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question for one of the questions?
Somehow. Yeah, you kind of answered the area of the question in that sense. I have one more question that I'd like to actually kind of ask you to the audience, if you're actually in this one. So I think there has been a long mythology that the dream of freedom was to fly, and now we can fly. So in your mind, what is the dream of humanity? If it's not to fly anymore, what is the next dream? Who would like to answer that question? Want to? Kenny?
No.
Kenny?
So the next dream of the humanity?
Yeah.
Save the planet?
Save the planet. Not to fly. Yeah. Anybody else?
I want
Yeah.
find space life, to find off-Earth intelligent life. I think because we're a very, very social species, and it would be nice to socialize with somebody besides ourselves.
Tired of this one? Yep.
Travel space.
Travel in space. So it means without gravity, or it means just to travel by any means?
Get beyond our solar system.
Sorry.
Get beyond our solar system to different galaxies.
I'm sorry to interrupt your question,
Yeah,
but I need to say goodbye. Unfortunately, I'm getting asked to leave by security. It's 12:30 p.m. Yeah. We've been packing up around you, so I'm sorry if that's been distracting. But I'd love any of your questions or correspondence. Please send me an email, send me a Twitter message or something. I'd love to follow up. And best wishes for the rest of the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
And we can have it all. We can have ocean and space. You don't have to choose.
No rebuttal.
You want to answer?
Mine would be to live in the ocean. Under the ocean. Have it.
Others?
I'll go ahead. So I like the idea of the open space agency, right? So what if many of these government agencies become more global, more open agencies? I think that could be a dream for humanity.
And would you like to take part in one of these? Like,
I kind of am by being here, right? So I know I'm a big believer of the maker movement. I'm very active in it myself, so that is one part of it. So if we can do that, like bigger, so open space agency or ocean agency, that's the next step. Who's next?
yeah, I let the microphone to Sarah.
Okay, I want to go at it. My idea of the next humanity shape. Well, I'm kind of really into like social issues, so I don't know if that like connects with anyone of you, but my idea would be to end poverty. Kind of sidetracked a bit, but yeah.
And behind you, Avinash. Yes.
So I don't really think this is probably like a dream of humanity or something, but I think this would be really awesome if we can somehow like communicate with different species, especially like talk to animals, marine life, things like that. That would be good.
The lights.
Maybe
Just put it in someone's hand, they can't resist.